Good afternoon. I am John Andrew I'm Assistant Deputy Director of the California Department of Water Resources, and happy to be here to very quickly run you through really three things this afternoon. First, I'm going to spend a couple of slides on some background on California water resources, so we're all sort of on the same page on the issues we're facing. I'm then going to talk a bit about the impacts, current and projected, of climate change on water resources. And actually, at this point in the workshop, you've actually, I think, heard of most of them already from my other colleagues, which I think shows good cross-sector collaboration in and of itself. And then I'll close with a couple of examples, actually one main example on some of our responses to climate change in the water sector. So first up is part of the background. This is the standard precipitation map for California. Blue is I guess the good parts of the state, if you will. Lots of water there as you go through the color scheme, especially as you get down to the reds. A lot of dryness in the state. I know for some of you you probably know that already. The couple of things to keep in mind with this is that, as I think Sandy mentioned at the onset of this workshop today, we have a Mediterranean climate. So we get 5 or 6 months of precipitation, often based upon just a handful of storms every year. And then we go for months on end. We're in that period right now. We're coming to the end of it where it just doesn't rain at all in many parts of California. The other thing that's variable is in terms of spatially. So a lot of water, as I noted earlier, up in the north along the Sierra Nevadas, along the east side of the state, and then very dry throughout the rest of the state. As it turns out, our demand patterns in California are exactly the opposite of our supply patterns. Most of our demand temporally is in the summer, early fall, when it doesn't rain, and most of our demand, both for agriculture and for population, is in the south and not in the north. So about 2/3 of our runoff occurs north of where we are right now, and about 2/3 of the demand occurs in the south. The other thing to keep in mind is that with a Mediterranean climate, you're kind of naturally in a drought almost every year because it doesn't rain. And so the problem isn't always that we don't have enough water. I think as Kathy nicely highlighted, it's often that we have too much water, especially on a very short-term basis. So flood risk in California is remarkably high. There's 7 million people in California that are exposed to flood risk, 3 million in Southern California, another million here in the Central Valley. Sacramento has the highest flood risk of any city in the entire country. So it's both not enough water, and sometimes it's even more important to be concerned about too much water. In order to match supply and demand, we do a lot of movement of water around California, and that's what this slide, the slide of the state, shows. Most of that is done by local, federal, and state system. We primarily move water, as you might expect, from north to south and east to west, and in the south coast we actually do both directions. I think the takeaway message from this slide is not so much the movement of water around the state, which is very important, these state and federal projects. We like to fight about them a lot, but it's that big green chunk and the purple or blue chunk that says groundwater. I think, again, another theme that you've heard throughout this workshop is the importance of local action, and that's very much true in the water sector as well. Really, all water management in California is a local matter, and so local projects in groundwater, which is primarily a local issue in the state, is where where water management happens. So keep that in mind as I go through a couple of more slides here and talk about responses later. Up next is a cartoon, actually, from the California Water Plan. Our department produces the state's water plan every 5 years. This is from the 2009 update of the California Water Plan. The 2013 update of the water plan actually is due out, I guess, any moment. I think the first part of it may be released as soon as this week. In 2009, we had a huge focus on climate change, as you will see in the 2013 update as well. This just lays out some of the impacts to water resources that climate change is causing now and will cause in the future. And again, I think these have been well summarized by my colleagues in their sector presentations already. Again, keeping with a regional theme in the Sacramento and San Francisco hydrologic regions, that's what the HR stands for. we're seeing about, and it was just mentioned by Mr. Metcalf, actually a reduction in our snowpack. We think we've actually already seen about a 10% reduction in the Sierra snowpack. That's not based upon computer models. It's not based upon greenhouse gas emission scenario, anything like that. That's just the data that we've collected over the past 100 years, and we think that that's what we're already seeing here with climate change. Again, as you've heard from my colleagues, shifts in runoff and precipitation, more variability, more extremes, and especially near and dear to the hearts of Sacramentans, we've seen higher and more variable flood peaks, especially in the last half of the 20th century, and that's especially pronounced on the American River, just a few blocks from where we are right now. In the future, we think that these things are probably going to just continue, unfortunately. I think Gary, who had a great presentation on sea level rise, also provided a nice caution on trying to predict the future, and so we won't give you a single number for what we think the snowpack is going to look like out in 2050, but we think probably, I think we're safe to say another quarter to a 40% reduction in the Sierra snowpack is what we're on track for right now. Again, flooding magnitudes are probably going to continue to be more extreme and more variable. And as I think Tina mentioned actually in her presentation, again, very near and dear to the hearts of people here in Sacramento, some real impacts in the Delta, probably one of the most vulnerable areas in the state, one of the most vulnerable regions in the state to climate change for a number of reasons. Let me close now with a couple of comments on some things that we're doing already to address climate change. And again, a continuing theme is local and regional action. And for some time now, the Department of Water Resources has been focusing on what's called integrated regional water management. I think it was mentioned previously by one of my colleagues, IRWM. There are currently 48 regional water management groups around California. These are groups of stakeholders, water and wastewater utilities, flood agencies, environmental nonprofits, cities and counties, hopefully, because they control the land use in the state, all getting together at the regional level and deciding for themselves what is the best plan for their region, what are their values, what resources can they bring to the table to address their water management future. Some of these regional water management groups, as you can tell, are very small, especially there are some in the South Coast that are quite small. The Southern San Joaquin Valley has a bit of a diversity of groups. And then they range to groups that are actually quite large. The North Coast group there basically takes up the entire, from probably Marin County all the way to the Oregon border. The Inyo Mano group on the east side of the Sierra is also large. So a real diversity in these groups around the state, reflecting the diversity of the regions. The idea, again, I think mentioned by actually Tina while she was describing the Adaptation Planning Guide that her agency and CNRA, California Natural Resources Agency, produced a couple of years ago, is that we really are one state, but we are a state of many different regions, and climate change is going to affect different regions of the state differently, and you really cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach to climate change, especially as it affects water management in California. To further support local and regional water planning in California, about now almost 4 years ago, time flies, we set out to, I think Dave actually mentioned the need to support local efforts, and we decided to address that issue specifically in the water management arena. We produced this handbook along with some partners. Actually, one of our partners was EPA Region 9, Suzanne Mars here in the audience, and actually the project manager for this handbook, Andrew Schwartz, is here as well. This includes one of its key tools is a vulnerability assessment. You've heard this again from some of the other sectors, so that actually regional water management planners can actually do an assessment, a vulnerability assessment of their water situation. The handbook, we have a lot of, in short, we really have a lot of great science. You saw Gary Griggs today. We have a lot of great scientists in California, a lot of great climate science. I think a lot of great climate policy as well, but if you're a local or regional water planner sitting in a water utility or an irrigation district, sometimes that's a bit hard to translate for you. And so this handbook, this is really, if you're one of those people that is in that situation, you need to get this handbook. This allows you to take the high-level science and policy and actually apply it to your local situation. The other thing the department has invested in is actually human resources as well. Humans are still important, thank goodness, to this. It's not all paper. And so we have established 4 dedicated positions, one in each of our regional offices around the state, to work with local and regional planners on climate change. And I'm happy to introduce Aaron Chappell, who is here with us today. She is the Regional Climate Change Specialist for this part of California. And if you need help with during the process of updating the climate adaptation strategy or thereafter, please contact Erin, or actually anybody on our staff, but Erin would be your first point of contact to help you out. With that, I'm happy to take any questions. I think we still have time, and comments. Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you for attending.